Hello everyone, I am the storyteller. Tonight I'll tell you a story about isolation, memory, and a curse that never dies. An experienced Dr. Elias Monroe would come to regret the moment he stepped into a town that shouldn't exist. Relax, listen to the wind roll over the empty plains, and discover what was waiting in the dust when Dry Creek remembered his name. Something's wrong with the sky above Dry Creek. Has been for as long as anyone can remember, though most folks are too afraid or too old to say it out loud. Me, I didn't believe in curses until I inherited one, and by the time I understood what that meant, it had already rooted into me like rust and old iron. I keep trying to tell myself there's a rational explanation for all of this, that what I saw wasn't real, that what I did wasn't my fault. But the wind still calls my name in a voice that sounds like my father's, and not the man who raised me. The other one, the real one. They told me Dry Creek was abandoned, that the population had dropped from 200 to 23 in the last decade, and half of those were just waiting for the other shoe to drop. They didn't say why. Not directly. I arrived on a Wednesday in October, one of those strange high desert days where the sun burns your skin, but the wind cuts right through your bones. The gravel road gave way to hard pan dirt, and my rented SUV moaned like it was being pulled into something it didn't want to see. Dry Creek sat in a basin carved out of red rock and broken memory, bordered on all sides by jagged cliffs the locals called the Teeth. Wind funneled through those stone fangs in unnatural patterns, turning a simple breeze into something that almost whispered. If you stood still long enough. I didn't. I kept moving. I always keep moving. That's what saved me once. I was coming back for answers. That's what I told myself. In truth, it was a letter, yellowed, torn at the edges, postmarked from a town that shouldn't exist anymore. Inside, one sentence, handwritten in cracked blue ink. You know the blood debt. Elias, come claim it, or it claims you. Signed only with a scrawl. H.M., my father's initials. But he'd been dead since 1997. I parked near the general store, what was left of it. The windows were gone, plywood sagging in their place. A faded hand-painted sign above the door read, Dry Goods and Spirituals. A shotgun blast had taken out half the word spirituals. I took that as a sign the town was silent. Not empty, but still, like a creature holding its breath, watching. As I stepped out, dust kicked up around my boots. It clung to everything here, hats, boots, skin. The locals called it grave dust, fine as flour, the color of dried blood. It smelled like copper and rot. I'd forgotten that smell. Or maybe I just forced myself to. I looked up and saw her, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat, standing in the doorway of a house down the street, watching me, not waving, not smiling, just watching. The first man I spoke to was behind the counter of what passed for a diner, thin, yellow teeth, a stare like cracked glass. You the Monroe boy? He asked. Dr. Monroe, I corrected. I'm here. He cut me off with a nose halfway between a chuckle and a spit. Yeah, you're here. I found a room at the old boarding house. No key, just a room number scratched into a brass plate. Room 3... Same room my father had stayed in the summer he disappeared. The walls were papered in green patterns that reminded me of snake scales. A single bed, a dresser, a cracked mirror that reflected too many shadows. The air smelled of coal oil and mildew, familiar. As I unpacked my things, I found something I hadn't packed, a small brass pocket watch, engraved on the back for what was taken. It ticked loud, louder than it should have, and when I held it close to my ear, I swear I heard something breathing inside it. That night the dreams came back, same one I'd had as a child after my father disappeared. I'm standing in the canyon behind the town, naked feet on cracked red stone, wine scraping my skin. A voice calls out from the shadows, deep and slow. "You've been here before, Elias." I turn to run, but the ground splits beneath me, a crevasse yawns open. I fall, down and down, past bones, roots, old faces with hollow eyes. At the bottom, something waits. Its voice sounds like mine, only older. It whispers, "We never left." I woke choking. The room smelled like sage and rot. The pocket watch ticked steadily beside my bed. Only now it was open, and the face showed no time at all. Just a mirror, and in it I wasn't alone. The town felt different the next morning. Not colder, not quieter, just shifted like someone had picked it up and set it back down wrong. The streets were empty, though I hadn't heard anyone leave. The dust was thick on my windshield, even though I'd parked the car under the lean-to out back. My phone said 7:13 a.m., but the sky had that silver, expectant tone of just before dusk. I stepped outside. My boots left prints in the red dust that didn't match the direction I'd come from. The diner was open again. Barely. The sign in the window had flipped from closed for burial to yes, coffee, and I didn't question it. Inside, the same man stood behind the counter, same blank eyes, same cracked hands. "You're up early," he said, though I hadn't told him where I was staying. "Didn't sleep much," I replied, nodding to the percolator. "Dreams?" His voice had no tone. It wasn't a question. "Not really." I nodded slowly. He slid a mug across the counter. It smelled like burnt chicory and ashes. "You shouldn't look too long at the things in your blood," he muttered. They looked back. I turned to find someone else sitting at the booth by the window. A woman, mid-30s, maybe, shoulder-length black hair, worn jeans, a flannel jacket dusted at the cuffs. She was reading something on an old clipboard, but looked up just long enough to catch my eye. She nodded once. "You're Monroe." "Dr. Elias Monroe," I said. "You are?" "Lena Rodriguez, journalist, sort of." She slid the clipboard under her arm. "Came here chasing a story about a missing priest. Stayed because things don't make sense." "That's why I'm here too," I said. "No." Her voice dropped. "You're here because it never let you leave." I didn't answer. She was right, of course, but that kind of talk was bait. I'd interviewed enough unhinged people to know the rhythm of delusion. When I heard it, except this wasn't that. She looked too tired to be lying. "There's a file," she continued, "locked in the sheriff's basement. Newspaper clippings, photos, tape recordings, some of them dated before the incidents they describe, names of people who never existed, according to the state, pages that vanish, and you photocopy them. And you've seen this?" "I've seen enough," she said. "But you're part of this place. You'll see more. Back on Main Street, I noticed something strange. The church steeple was missing." I stopped walking, squinted down the lane. Sure enough, the old wooden chapel still stood peeling white paint, boarded windows, but the steeple that had towered above it just yesterday was gone. Not broken, not collapsed, gone, no rubble, no splinters, no shadow where it had fallen, just sky. As I stood there staring, a man stepped out of the alley beside the sheriff's office. He was tall and thin, wore a charcoal gray suit, out of place for the terrain. Wide-brimmed black hat too clean. His face was long, expressionless, pale as chalk. But what I noticed, what hit me like a knife in the stomach, was that he didn't blink. Not once. He walked past without speaking. No dust clung to his shoes, no crunch underfoot. And as he passed, I felt the temperature drop. Back at the boarding house, room 3 smelled different again. Not sage this time, wet wood, decay, like water had seeped in through the walls and brought something with it. I checked the dresser, nothing, the closet, empty. Then I opened the mirror cabinet above the sink. Inside, a photograph I didn't remember unpacking. It was black and white, faded, cracked at the edges. A group of men standing in a circle around a bonfire, faces half lit by flame. In the middle, a child, bound to a post, eyes wide, mouth open. The man standing directly behind the child looked like me, but older, and the back of the photo had a handwritten message. The first debt was paid in blood. The second waits beneath. I dropped the photo and backed away. The ticking of the pocket watch filled the room again, even though I'd locked it in my bag. I took it out. It was open again. No time. Just the mirror. Only this time there was something behind my reflection. A figure, tall, thin, in a gray suit. Standing behind me, I turned. Nothing. Just the smell of wet rot and the faintest echo of ticking receding down the hallway, as if time itself had gotten up and walked away. There were 2 schools in Dry Creek, someone told me once, one for the children that stayed above ground, and one for the children that didn't. The official schoolhouse was a red brick box at the edge of town, shuttered since the 90s, though the graffiti outside was older. It sat on warped ground, sloping ever so slightly toward the dried-up creek bed that gave the place its name. The wind picked up there, funneled sharp between the walls. It whispered when it passed through the broken windows. I didn't mean to go there that morning. I meant to drive out of town to the cliff trail where my father vanished all those years ago. But the road was gone. Not blocked, not washed out, just not there. Where the pavement had been was now a swath of cracked earth and tumbleweed, stretching out toward nothing, as if no one had ever poured asphalt at all. The only road still intact was the one that led to the schoolhouse, so I followed it. The double doors hung crooked on their hinges. I pushed one open and stepped inside. Desks, dozens of them, all facing the same chalkboard, names carved deep into wood. Not student names, surnames, whole family lines. Some of them I recognized from old case files, others from my own genealogy. On the board someone had written in chalk, "The lesson is repeated until learned." Underneath, "Monroe failed. I turned to leave in, saw her again." The woman from the porch, the one who didn't wave. She was standing in the back of the classroom. No sound, no movement, just there. Her voice was soft, like dry leaves scraping pavement. "You came back. I didn't have much choice," I replied, already backing toward the door. "You never left." I blinked, and she was gone. But something had changed. The desks were no longer empty. Now, in each one, there sat a figure, small, gray, and moving. Paper matched children, it seemed at first, but their eyes were wrong, too real, too still, and one of them was holding my pocket watch. I hadn't brought it. I left it in room 3, locked in the bag. It ticked, loud, then stopped. I grabbed the watch and ran. Outside, the wind had picked up. The dust swirled in lazy, unnatural circles, and something was wrong with the sky again. Not dark, not bright, just off, like the color had been drained out. A sky left in the sun too long. When I looked back at the schoolhouse, there were no windows, not broken, just none, as if the building hadn't ever needed to breathe. I drove back to town. This time the road was there again. Lena was waiting outside the diner, arms crossed, staring at the sky. You saw it, didn't you? She asked. What the hell is happening in this place? She looked at me for a long moment, then said, There's a root system under Dry Creek. Not trees, not pipes, something older. It feeds on memory, on family. That's why people leave. But their names don't. She held up a faded ledger. Your father tried to burn this. I salvaged the pages. Want to know what he wrote about you? I didn't answer, but she opened it anyway. In the margin beside a list of dates and symptoms he'd written, Elias saw it at 5 years old, pretended not to. That was the last time he slept through the night. She turned the page. More notes, more scratches. One entry, boxed in red ink. If he returns, the cycle begins again. Warn him never to look under the school. Beneath that, they buried the mouths down there. I stared at the page until the words bled together. My hands were shaking, not because I was afraid, because I remembered the sound the ground made when I was a child playing near that schoolhouse, a hollow sound, a breathing sound. That night I didn't sleep. The mirror showed nothing, but the watch ticked again. Only this time it whispered too. Not words, not yet, just breath right against my ear and behind my eyes. I waited until nightfall to return to the school. Some part of me knew I shouldn't. Every instinct I'd ever relied on in interviews, in profiling work, in reading madness off the surface of a human face screamed at me to stay in that room, bar the door, and burn the damn pocket watch to ash. But instinct hadn't saved my father or me. Not then, not now. I parked the car in the same patch of dead grass and took a flashlight with me. The moon was too high for October, almost straight overhead, casting shadows in the wrong direction. The wind had stilled, not quite just gone. As I stepped toward the schoolhouse, I noticed something strange. There were footprints in the dirt, not mine, smaller, barefoot, leading to the door and back out again. Only they didn't lead toward the street. They disappeared into the earth. Inside, the classroom was empty. No desks, no chalkboard, no writing, just a hollow shell. The floor was warped now. I hadn't noticed that before, bowed upward at the edges, as if something beneath it had swelled. I walked the length of the room, counting my steps, trying to ignore the way the flashlight flickered every few seconds like a heartbeat. On the 12th step, the beam caught something. A trapdoor, barely visible beneath dust and warped boards. No lock, no handle, just a faint iron ring set into the wood. I hesitated, then pulled. The smell hit me first wet stone, decay, old soul, the kind of smell that clings to graves that were never properly sealed. I held my breath and descended the stairs, one by one. The wood creaked beneath me. It didn't sound like aging timber, it sounded like complaint. The beam of my flashlight revealed narrow stone walls, moist, carved by hand long ago. There were symbols etched into them, circular patterns with too many spokes. None of it matched any indigenous symbology I had studied. It felt older, W-O-N-G or dot at the base of the stairs. The tunnel opened into a low cavern. The ceiling forced me to crouch, and that's when I heard it. Breathing, not mine, not an echo below me. I knelt and placed my hand on the ground. It was warm. No, it was beating a pulse, faint but steady. The earth beneath me was alive, and then I saw them in the wall, not buried, grown into it. Skulls, hundreds, maybe more, some bleached, some fresh, all open-mouthed. They weren't just buried here. They were part of the structure, as if the cavern hadn't been built around them. But from them the flashlight flickered out. I slapped it once, twice. It blinked back on just long enough for me to see something at the far end of the chamber. A mirror, full-length, ornate frame. Clean glass, standing there, waiting. My reflection looked back at me, then blinked, and I didn't. I stumbled back, flashlight clattering to the floor. The mirror cracked. I heard something move in the dark wet, slithering low to the ground. The flashlight flicked on one more time. The watch lay at my feet again, ticking, only now it didn't whisper. It sang a low, guttural lullaby, words I didn't recognize, but knew were meant for me. I ran. By the time I reached the surface, the stars had changed. I don't mean the sky was clouded. I mean the constellations were wrong. No Orion, no Big Dipper, just a spiral of pinpricks, rotating slowly around a blank center. The moon had moved again, or maybe the world had. Lena was waiting on the porch when I got back. "You went hello," she said, not asking. Yes. She handed me a map, an old one, surveyor's parchment, dated 1887. "What's this?" "Original plat map of Dry Creek, before the mines, before the church, before the water dried up." I opened it. The town looked the same, almost, except for one marking, a large X just behind the schoolhouse, labeled in faded ink, the mouth. Beneath it, written in red, "Salt the ground, burn what listens." Lena took the map back. "My father was a surveyor. He found this. Showed it to your father once." I didn't speak. "There's more," she said, "a journal, kept by a man named Abraham Monroe. Ring any bells? My great-grandfather. He helped build the first chapel, but not before digging a pit underneath it. He called it the womb." Her voice trembled, just a little. "It was never meant to be a place of worship. It was a place of containment." Back in room 3, I checked the mirror. My reflection was there this time. No delay, no flicker. But I noticed something strange. The wallpaper behind me, green scales, didn't match the room I was in. And in the mirror, the bed was empty. Even though I was sitting on it, I blinked. And in the mirror I didn't sleep. I sat at the desk in room 3, eyes locked on the mirror across from me, watching a reflection that didn't quite follow my movements. If I raised my hand, it raised its a heartbeat later. When I blinked, it stared back unflinching. Around midnight, I covered the mirror with a towel, and the towel slid off on its own an hour later. I drove to the edge of town. There's an old house past the creek, up against the cliff wall, a holdout from the Dust Bowl days. its porch swallowed by weeds and thorns. Locals call it the Granger Place. He was waiting for me on the porch. Samuel Granger. Locals just call him Old Sam. 80-something, maybe 90. No one remembers exactly. Still stood tall, though his eyes looked like they'd seen too much light and too many lies. He didn't speak right away, just puffed on a pipe and looked out at the horizon like he was watching for cavalry that would never come. "You see it yet?" he asked. "See what?" "The root." He tapped his temple. "The part of you that don't belong to you." He invited me in. The walls were lined with shelves of tin cans and pickled things in jars, none labeled. The whole place smelled like rust and lavender. A dog I never saw breathed heavy in the next room, or maybe it was something else entirely. "Your blood's wrong," he said. "Ain't your fault, boy, but it's been wrong a long while. My father didn't fix nothing, just slowed it down. Tried to cut it out the old way. Fire and silence. You ever seen a man try to cauterize a soul? Burns everything but the wound." He poured two glasses of something brown and clear and strong. I didn't touch mine. "Abraham Monroe," he said. That was the start. He came west with a book and a plan. Thought he could bury what he found here. What did he find? Sam smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. Something that remembers. He walked to a back room and came out with a photograph album, hand-bound, stitched with copper wire. Dusty as bone. Found this in the ground back when I still dug graves. Buried behind the chapel. Her eyes had been scratched out violently, not carefully. In the margin was written, "The second mouth." "She yours?" I asked. "No, but she be someone's." He turned the page. Another photo. Me. But I was a boy in the picture. 4, maybe 5. Standing in front of the chapel, dot behind me. A shadow. Tall, wrong. It had no source. "I don't remember this," I said. "Not yet," Sam replied. "But you will. That's the curse. It remembers you before you remember it." "What is it?" "Something we invited, thinking we could use it. Something old enough to hide in silence. It don't kill outright. It remembers through you. Makes you act like it." He tapped the side of the photo. "Your daddy tried to take it with him. Thought if he vanished, maybe the memory would too. But forgetting's a luxury of the innocent." Outside, the wind had picked up, but not from the north or west. It was coming from underground. Low, deep, with a voice in it now. A language I didn't understand but knew. A memory without words. As I stepped off the porch to leave, Sam called after me, "You'll see the river soon. Don't drink it. It ain't water no more." I turned. There's no river near Dry Creek. He didn't laugh, didn't blink. There is now. Back at the boarding house, room 3 was colder. The wallpaper had peeled back, revealing symbols underneath burned into the plaster. Not drawn, branded. The mirror had cracked again. The watch lay on my pillow, ticking backward, and the reflection showed something new behind me. The chapel, on fire, burning in reverse. I blinked. The room returned, but I could still smell smoke. And somewhere beneath me, beneath the floorboards, beneath the town, I heard something whisper in a voice like mine. "You left us open." I fell asleep with the lights on. Didn't mean to. Didn't want to. But the watch stopped ticking around 3 a.m. And the silence it left behind was worse than the sound. I'm 5 years old again. Standing barefoot in the middle of the Dry Creek bed behind the chapel. The rocks are hot, but the sun has rung its hanging low in the east like it forgot where it's supposed to be. There's no water, just dust and stone, but I can hear it. A river just beneath my feet, rushing fast, loud, hungry. I kneel and press my ear to the ground. Yes, it's there, moving too fast for the space it occupies. Something's wrong with the dirt. It's breathing. Behind me I hear laughter. I turn. A man stands at the edge of the creek, dressed like a priest, but the color is on backwards. His hands are raw, wet, like he's been digging. He's holding a book upside down, reading aloud in a language that flickers between syllables and sounds I feel instead of hear. The more he reads, the louder the river gets, and then I see them, children, lining the far edge of the dry creek, each holding a stone. They begin walking into the bed. One by one, their eyes closed, their mouths open, chanting words that sound like mine, but spoken backward. They step into nothing. One by one they fall, vanish. No splash, the ground is gone. Only the sound of rushing water remains, and the smell of wet ash. I look down. My feet are gone. Buried in the earth. No, not buried, taken. The priest stops reading, looks at me, and smiles with a mouth full of teeth that don't match. Some are human, some aren't. You're the last Monroe, he says, but you won't be the first. I woke choking on my own breath. The air in room 3 was thick with humidity. The walls dripped condensation. I stumbled to the window and yanked it open only to find the street outside completely dry. The air crisp, arid, cold inside. Wet, warm, rotting, like the dream had left its breath behind. I checked the watch. It was still, face cracked, the mirror gone. In its place, a piece of folded paper wedged where the mirror used to be. I pulled it out, hands trembling. It was a map, hand-drawn, rough, and labeled only with one phrase. The river under Dry Creek isn't water. There was a knock at the door. I opened it without thinking. No one there. Just a small wooden box on the floor. Inside, the fragment of bone, human ... child-sized, wrapped in a strip of fabric with a name embroidered in it. L. Monroe, my little sister, dead 30 years. I fell to the floor, not because I was afraid, because I remembered now just for a second. She had followed me to the creek that day, long ago, and I had turned my back. She had whispered something about hearing the people in the ground, and then she was gone. Everyone said she drowned in the flood that followed. But Dry Creek never flooded, never. The mirror showed nothing for the rest of that day. No reflection, just darkness, and deep in that dark, the glint of water moving where no water should be. The library was built in 1913, burned down in 1942, and rebuilt in 1971 exactly as it was before, down to the mismatched tiles near the front desk and the fossilized lizard trapped in the window glass. It shouldn't have been standing. By all rights, time should have crumbled it like everything else in Dry Creek. But as Lena had said, some places don't age, they just wait. I found the records room in the basement. No lights, just rows of filing cabinets, and the smell of warmed dust and melted plastic. The temperature dropped as I stepped inside. Every drawer I opened was empty, or worse, full of pages soaked black with mold and something thicker. Then I found one, Cabinet 19, label faded but legible. Frontier Incidents, 1880 to 1889, inside. Photos, ledgers, local census lists that included names not recorded anywhere else. Some crossed out, some underlined in red, and one folder labeled Subject Abraham Monroe redacted. Inside the folder was only a single page, a drawing, childlike, charcoal on yellow paper. It showed a man in a wide-brimmed hat standing in front of a pit. Below him, a row of open mouths, each mouth filled with hands. There were words scribbled along the bottom. He fed them until they could speak. I turned to leave and saw it. A hole in the wall, brick cracked inward, like something had been pushing out from the other side. I knelt and pulled at the loosened stone. 1, 2, 3 bricks came away easy, like the wall wanted to be opened. Behind them, a masked bone, polished, smooth, hollow eyes, painted lines along the cheeks in the shape of tree roots or blood vessels, and carved into the forehead. The same symbol from the schoolhouse walls, a circle split by 3 vertical lines. The moment I touched it, the room changed. The temperature reversed, heat pressed in from the floor, dry and suffocating, the walls bent inward, shelves elongated, drawers stretched, time slowed. The lights flickered and shifted color orange, red, then a dark blue I don't have a word for, and behind me a voice I hadn't heard in 30 years said, "You shouldn't have taken that." I turned. Lena was gone. The room was empty. But in the mirror on the back of the basement door, my reflection wore the mask, even though I was holding it in my hands. When I finally left the library, the sun was in the wrong place again. Too high, too bright, and I was bleeding, my left palm, sliced where the bone of the mask had bitten into me. Only I don't remember it cutting me. I don't remember it ending up in my bag either. But there it was, packed neatly beside the pocket watch, as if it had always been there. Back at room 3, the mirror was uncovered again. No crack this time, no darkness instead. An old photograph, projected across the glass like a slide. It showed me and my sister, standing in front of the chapel, holding hands. But the date scrawled in the corner read, June 1885. That night I didn't sleep. The mask sat on the desk, the eyes facing the door. I turned it away 3 times. Each time it turned back on its own. Around midnight I heard someone knock. For slow knocks, evenly spaced, measured. I opened the door. No one there, but down the hallway at the far end I saw something small. A child, barefoot, pale, hair matted with something dark. She was standing still, facing away, whispering, and what she whispered wasn't words. It was the sound of digging. The next morning I woke to bird song. That was the first thing wrong. There were no birds in Dry Creek, not since I arrived. Not a flutter, not a crow, not a chirp. The sky was always too still. I sat up in bed. The light outside was wrong again, dim and golden, like late autumn sun filtered through wax paper. The pocket watch was gone from the knit stand. So was the mask. But someone had left a journal on the floor beside my bed, bound in cracked leather, pages uneven, heavy as a brick, no name on the cover, no lock, just one word burned into the spine. Remain. I flipped it open. The first page was filled with handwritten dates and observations, neat and clinical. Sep. 2. Arrived in Dry Creek. No major disruptions. Locals evasive. Dreams beginning. Sep 4. Mirror fractured during sleep. Auditory hallucinations upon waking. Remnants of song remain. Sep 7. Confirmed underground structure beneath schoolhouse. Subjective time slippage. It was in my handwriting, identical. But I had only been here for 4 days. The next page was different. Same dates, same events, but rewritten. In a different hand, shaky, frantic. Margins filled with phrases scrawled in all directions. Sept 2. The chapel breathes when no one looks. Sept 4. She sleeps inside the roots now. Sept 7. I am not me anymore, but he wears my teeth. The ink changed color mid-sentence. Some entries trailed off into mirrored writing, as if penned by someone trying not to remember what they knew. And then I found this line, boxed in heavy graphite. The town resets if you leave the church facing west. I read it twice, 3 times. The next page was blank, ... and then I blinked. I was standing in front of the chapel, sun above, wine still. No memory of walking there, no memory of leaving room 3. Just the journal in my hands, open to that same line. I turned behind me. The library now had 2 stories. It didn't before, I was sure of it. Windows gleamed from a 2nd floor that hadn't existed yesterday. The bricks were the same old, weathered dust cake. The roof line hadn't changed, just more of it now. I returned to the room. Room 3 was colder. The wallpaper gone entirely. Exposed wood beneath scratched, clawed, more symbols. One of them pulsed slightly when I looked too long. The mirror reflected the room properly again. But on the desk sat the mask, returned, clean, polished, and beside it, the watch, ticking again. But the hands didn't move forward, they circled, clockwise, then counterclockwise, then paused at 3:13 and began again. I flipped through the journal again. More entries had appeared. Or maybe I'd missed them. One stuck with me, scribbled in bold strokes. The church door leads to the same place, but not the same way. That was the moment I remembered the first time I entered the church. The pews were intact, but when I saw it again this morning, they were broken, ash-covered, the altar charred, and the window that once bore a painted cross was now a circle. 3 vertical lines through it, the same symbol from the mask, from the wall, from the first drawing. That night I tested the theory. I entered the church facing west, and when I left, I was no longer in Dry Creek. Not exactly. The buildings looked the same, the air smelled the same. But the sky was not a sky I knew, red-brown, cloudless, flickering. And there were no sounds, no wind, no breath. The entire town looked paused. Bit-blank ... I walked back to the library. Now 3 stories. I opened the door, and the first thing I heard was my own voice, coming from the top floor, whispering. I didn't mean to leave her. I waited for morning, but it never came. The sky lightened, but only barely. A dull ochre glow washed over the buildings like light filtered through stagnant water. No sun, no movement. Time felt numb. I walked to the chapel again. This time I brought the journal, the mask, and the watch. All 3 felt heavier than they had yesterday, heavier than bone and brass should be, as if they were carrying parts of the town in them. Or of me ... inside. The pews were gone entirely now. Just deep scratches on the floor where they once stood. The altar had cracked down the middle, leading black mold onto the stone beneath. Behind the altar, the air shimmered, not visibly, just something I felt, like the static pressure before a thunderclap. There was a door I hadn't seen before, thick wood iron latch, dustless, like it had just been opened, or was always in use only never by anyone alive. I pushed it open. A narrow hallway sloped downward, lined with candle stubs and worn scripture in a language I couldn't read. The path bent sharply left, then again the walls began to sweat. Stone wept moisture like skin. At the bottom was a single room, a crypt, and at its center a book, resting on a pedestal made of bone, open, waiting. It was the burial registry, bound in red leather, stamped with the Monroe crest, a wax seal I recognized from my grandfather's ring. Each page listed names, dates, causes of death. Only something was wrong, names repeated, over and over, same people, different deaths. L. Rodriguez, found drowned, found dismembered, found frozen, found hollowed. E. Monroe, self-inflicted, ritual misstep, found in pieces, never found, each entry crossed out and rewritten. The latest one wasn't even ink, it was blood, still drying. E. Monroe, entered under false time. I flipped back. My name appeared twice on the same page, 2 lines apart. The first, Elias Monroe, deceased, age 5, freak incident. The second, Elias Monroe, deceased, unknown. I stared at those words until the page pulsed. The ink blurred, not like water, like it was breathing. A shape moved in the far wall. A panel slid open. Behind it, rows of burial drawers, each marked not with names, but dates. Some in the past, some still to come. The drawer labeled June 17, 2025 was slightly ajar. That's my birthday, and the drawer was empty. Waiting as I stepped back, I knocked over the watch. It cracked against the stone, and the ticking stopped. I heard something shift in the ceiling, a whisper, like cloth dragging on wood, echoed down the crypt, and then footsteps, tiny, barefoot, coming down the hallway I had just walked. I turned off the flashlight, held my breath, and listened as the steps paused outside the door. Then a child's voice whispering through cracked vocal cords, I remember you now. I ran up the tunnel, through the altar hall, out into the lightless day. The sky had changed again. Now it was mere black reflective, showing not clouds but the town below, as if the sky had become a ceiling and I was inside something. Back in room 3, I found something new. On the floorboards, muddy footprints, small, child-sized, leading from the closet to the bed, and back. The mirror showed only the room. But for the first time, my reflection was gone. When I left room 3, Lena was standing across the street. She wasn't facing me, just watching the chapel. Her jacket was damp, clinging to her arms like she'd been pulled out of water. But her hair was dry. You die, I said, not a question. She turned slowly, as if the movement hurt. I've died for times, she said. Only 3 stuck, so far. We walked without speaking, past the sheriff's station, past the well with no rope, past the general store with a boarded-up window that used to reflect too many people. I stopped in front of it. The reflection was back, but not of me, of another man. Same face, same coat, same watch chain hanging from the breast pocket. But he was smiling. I never smile here. Lena saw it too. That's not the first one, she whispered, just the one that stayed behind. I turned to her. What are you saying? I found old notes in my handwriting, she said, letters to myself, from myself, some with warnings, others with instructions. She looked me in the eye. Have you ever wondered why the room was waiting for you? Why the mirror was already cracked? My mouth went dry. You've been here before, Elias, she said, more than once. I didn't remember it, but I did. Somewhere under the nose of thought, beneath the condition, disbelief, below the last line of rational defense, I remembered leaving in a different year, wearing a different coat, younger, and I remembered not all of me leaving. We returned to the church. Again, third time, fourth, I'd lost count. Inside, the altar was now gone. In its place, a flat circle of stone inscribed with the same spiral I'd seen in the sky, and around it 5 masks, each different, each carved from something not quite bone. One had teeth, one was smooth, one had my face. At the edge of the room stood a man, tall, still, hat low. I approached slowly, heart pounding in my throat. He didn't move, didn't breathe, and when I stepped into the light, I saw myself. Same coat, same eyes, but empty. His mouth moved, not words, just motion. Like mimicking speech, Lena gasped behind me. He's trying to remember how to be you. I stepped closer, his face twitched, like a broken film reel struggling to sink. Then he raised one hand, pointed past me at Lena, and spoke to words in a voice not mine. She forgets, the chapel floor groaned. Dust lifted in a circle around us, like breath held and exhaled, and then a sound I can only describe as a mirror breaking inside a throat. The other me collapsed. Lena grabbed my arm. We have to go now. Outside, the town was gone, same layout, same structures, but every building was facing the wrong direction. Doors where windows should be, roads bending inward, shadows cast without light, and over everything, that spiral sky, spinning just slowly enough to notice. I looked at Lena. She was bleeding from one eye, but she didn't seem to notice. Back in room 3, the bed was unmade. Blood on the pillow, not fresh, not dry. It was shaped like a face. Mine, I turned to the mirror, still no reflection. But there was writing on the glass now, not carved, not inked, just appearing. Which one are you now? The general store had been boarded up for 20 years. No lights, no traffic, no signs of life. But when I stepped inside, the air was warm, active, like breath just exhaled. Dust hung motionless in the shafts of light from the broken roof. On the shelves, canned goods long expired, labels peeled, glass bottles filled with cloudy syrup, and something floating. At the back of the store, where the shelves ended, was a trapdoor. Barely visible beneath a faded rug, a brass plate had been nailed to the wood. Authorized access. To archive C. It creaked as I opened it. The air below was damp and smelled of old iron and oil. I descended the stairs slowly, each one grown like it remembered me. The basement was wide, low ceiling, shelves stacked to the beams, reel-to-reel tape recorders, dozens, and on each one a label, EM, version 3.4, incident 014, EM, version 4.1, interview self, TM, version 2.9, termination event. I stopped at one labeled simply EM, version 1.0 to arrival. I pressed play. The voice was mine, younger, steadier, still convinced reality could be mapped. This is Dr. Elias Monroe, Forensic Psych, Field Assignment Dry Creek. Arrived 7:43 a.m. October 2nd. Interviewing residents begins tomorrow. Mild headaches noted. No auditory anomalies yet. Clock is ticking. ... Literally, watch artifact won't stop. He laughed nervously. I'm going to figure out what happened here. It's just trauma. Echoes. The town is holding on to some shared delusion. That's all. The tape stopped, reversed itself, spun backward for 5 seconds, then played again. You already did this, Elias. You already try. And we're still here. I backed away. Found a box labeled transcripts, EM crossmatch. Inside were printed pages, dozens of them, some typed, some handwritten. The dates range from 1958 to 2021, all attributed to Dr. Elias Monroe, except I wasn't born until 1985. I pulled a page from the center at random. Subject began to resist recursion protocol after 19 cycles. Full reset recommended. Transfer artifact to mask vessel. Watch compromised. Another. He keeps remembering. Doesn't matter which version. Even the blank ones get there eventually. In the corner of the basement, I found a playback station. Old headphones, static-filled monitor on screen. Grainy black and white footage of the church interior. A man walks in, my height, my build. He kneels at the altar, removes his coat, pulls a revolver from his waistband. He places it on the floor, then lifts the mask, puts it on. His body convulses, then stills. The tape flickers. When it resumes, the man stands again. But now his movements are wrong, too smooth, like memory played at the wrong speed. And when he turns toward the camera, it's me. The screen went black. A message appeared. You are now in version 5.0. And beneath that, confirm participation. A blinking cursor waited, just like a form. Just like the intake files I use to review for inmates I never met. I pulled the headphones off. Somewhere behind the wall, a sound began, typing ... Mine. Not mechanical. Flesh, wet fingers, smacking keys. Recording something in real time. I turned and ran. Back on the main floor of the store, sunlight had returned, but the street was different. Fewer buildings, a layer of ash on every rooftop, and the sky no spiral this time. Only a single, enormous eye suspended where the sun should be, blinking once every few seconds. Lidless, pupil dilated, watching. Room 3 had changed again. The mirror was now facing the wall, turned that way by someone else, and on the bed, a copy of the journal, a fresh one. First page blank, but at the top, a new line had appeared in ink as I watched. Cycle 5 initiated, observing cognitive resistance patterns, and beneath that, Dr. Monroe, please describe your first memory. The journal followed me. I tried burning it. It reappeared. I buried it outside room 3. It showed up in my coat pocket, warm to the touch. By the third attempt, I stopped fighting it. Instead, I opened to the last written page. There was a map sketched in the margin, no title, just symbols. At the bottom, a note in handwriting that was definitely mine. The door doesn't lead to a place. IT leads to a possibility. And next to that, a single instruction. Go to the post office, walk backward. Don't look at the mailboxes. The post office had been boarded up since 1979. No roof, no staff. But the mailboxes were still their rows of rusted brass faces staring out from the wall. As I walked in backward, I felt it again, the shimmer, like heat rising from pavement, like a veil I wasn't meant to touch. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air tilted, weight shifted, sound bent sideways, and a hallway opened where the sorting room had been. No light, no floor, just a corridor of doors, each labeled with a year. 1985, 1972, 1996, 1883. Some years I recognized, others were future dates, years I hadn't lived through, would never. The corridor stretched in both directions, impossible in the one-story building. I chose the door labeled 1991, the year my sister vanished. Inside, a bedroom, my bedroom, age 6, red carpet, dinosaur posters, a wooden dresser with one broken knob, and in the center of the room, me small, curled in bed, breathing slow. I didn't dare speak. Then, from under the bed movement, small hands, her hands, she crawled out slowly, my sister. But her face wasn't fully formed, blurred, like someone had erased her from the memory too early. She leaned over the sleeping version of me and whispered, "Don't forget or they make you again." Then she looked directly at me, eyes fully formed, mouth to Y, and whispered again, "Tell him it was his fault." That's how the ritual starts. I stumbled backward. Out of the room, the door slammed shut behind me. The corridor shifted. Now only one door remained, unlabeled, cracked open. Inside, a circular chamber made of mirrors. No ceiling, just darkness above. And on every mirrored wall, me different ages, different expressions, all watching. But one of them moved. He stepped forward. Same height, same face, but his eyes were wrong. Flat, murky, familiar. "Do you know who I am yet?" he asked. "No." "You will?" I'm the version that finally said yes. To what he smiled, to forgetting. He reached into his coat and pulled out the mask, held it out. "You can leave, Elias, but only if someone stays." And then I understood. The ritual of forgetting wasn't destruction, it was replacement. One version left, one stayed behind to wear the memory, to rot in place of the next. The curse wasn't inherited, it was traded. I turned from him and found myself back in room 3. The mirror now showed 3 reflections, me, the other me, and the empty mask. One of us had to stay. The shovel was already waiting outside my door. Old iron blade, hickory handle, still wet. There was a note nailed to the shaft. If you're reading this, you chose to remember, so now you dig TM. The map and the journal led me north of town, past the last telephone pole, beyond the dry well, through the scrubland choked with ghost sage and brittle grass. I walked for 2 hours, maybe 10 minutes. Time had thinned again, felt like air to high up. At the edge of the plain stood a tree, dead, split down the center. A single crow perched on its branch, eyes milky white, and beside it, a cairn of skulls, each one carved with a symbol I recognized. The Monroe sigil, modified, twisted, turned inward, spiraled, collapsing. At its base, half buried in the red earth, was a hatch, iron, no handle. But the journal fit perfectly. into the indentation where a lock should have been. The hatch opened with a sigh. Below, steps carved into stone, worn from centuries of descent. I followed them down into the dark. The temperature dropped. My breath fogged, but beneath that, another smell. Salt, iron, rot. A tunnel opened up at the base, lit by flame that didn't flicker. It led to a pit, and what I saw there, I can't say it without lying, and I won't lie. They were all me, piled high, buried shallow, some only bones, others still breathing. Mouths sewn shut, eyes scratched out, hands broken at the knuckles. A whisper rose from the pile, not from mouths, but from memory. Each version was remembering at once, and they were remembering me. I fell to my knees. The mask in my bag began to hum. The watch ticked once, loud, and then one version near the top of the pile opened its eyes. My face, but age, cracked with soot. He reached for me with broken fingers. You were supposed to stay last time. I backed away. They keep us because we won't forget. The ones who forget, they get out. But they're not real anymore. He grabbed my wrist. You remember your sister? That's how they got her. She looked back. The mask rolled from my bag onto the floor. The pit went silent the moment the bone touched stone. Every version opened its mouth, even the stitched ones. No scream, no sound, just breath, one single exhale all at once. And in that when I heard the truth, memory is the door, forgetting is the price. You don't leave Dry Creek, you become part of it. I ran up the stairs, out the hatch, back into the dry wind that now smelled like rain, that offered none. The crow was gone. In its place, a strip of cloth nailed to the tree. I didn't want to look, but I did. L. Monroe. Same stitching as before. Fresh. Back at the chapel, Lena was waiting, but she looked wrong, older or newer. I couldn't tell anymore. You found them, she said. Yes. Then you know what has to happen. I won't stay, I said. You already are inside the chapel. The mirror on the altar had returned. 3 reflections again, but now only 2 of them moved. And the third, the mask was beginning to fill in. My features, my scars, my choices, it smiled. The trail is called Monroe's Cut now, named after my father. Locals say it used to be a game trail, a narrow line of crushed grass and erosion winding up the cliffs east of town. But after he disappeared on it in 1997, it was renamed, not out of respect, out of warning. No one walks it except me. The morning I left, Lena didn't try to stop me. She sat on the boarding house steps, chewing dried net leaves and watching the sky. The spiral had returned, but now it spun inward, not slowly, violently, like it was eating itself. Don't follow the whole trail, she said as I passed. Not unless you want to meet the one who remembers. Who? I asked, but she was already gone. Just dust on the wind. The higher I climbed, the less real the town became. Dry Creek below began to blur, buildings rearranging, streets shifting, the rooftops folded like paper. The church changed shape twice, and on the ridge behind me, I saw myself, a boy, watching. Same boots I wore at age 6, same blank face. When I blinked, he was gone. Halfway up the trail, I reached the marker, a rusted sign embedded in stone, carved by hand. Do not look back, do not look inward. The rock beneath it was scorched black. just past it, the bend, the place where my father vanished. I stepped around the curve, and the world peeled open, not visually, not with sound, with memory. Suddenly I was 14, calling for my father in the dusk, then 22, walking this same path with a woman I couldn't name, then 5, standing in the creek bed, hearing the voices in the soul, all at once, layered like onion skin, and then nothing, no path, just a field, endless, dry silver grass shifting in non-existent wind, and at its center a man. He stood barefoot, wearing my father's coat, holding my face, not metaphorically, holding it, a flesh mask of me, tan leather, eyeless. He smiled without teeth. "You came back again," he said. "Are you my father?" "No, but I wore him once." He remembered well. He stepped closer. I couldn't move. "Do you want to stop remembering?" "I don't know," I whispered. "That's what makes you perfect. You always don't know." He held out something, the mask, whole now, mouth stitched shut, eyes weeping. "The town doesn't feed on death," he said. "It feeds on indecision. Every version of you that hesitated stayed. Every one that ran returned. You're the mechanism, Elias, not the victim." I backed away, but the ground behind me wasn't trail. It was chapel tile, room 3's wallpaper. The schoolhouse floor, my childhood bedroom, all layered, breathing. "You've walked every path," he said. "Now walk the last." I turned and ran. The field rippled like water. Every step landed on a different year. 1985, 1932, 1977, 2023, and then I fell into the earth, not darkness, film grain, static, footage of myself walking the trail. Dozens of versions, each a frame. Some turned back. Some went forward. One hung himself from the marker. One stood still until he rotted. One simply lay down and closed his eyes. And one, me, walked to the center of the spiral and put the mask on, not to forget, but to remember differently. That version looked up at me through the film screen and said, "You're not the real Elias, you're just the next draft." I woke in room 3, or a version of it. The wallpaper was green again, but this time it writhed gently when I wasn't looking. The bed was made untouched. The mirror showed the room as it was, only without me in it. On the knit stand sat the journal, the watch, and the mask, the trinity, the ritual. The journal was closed now, but on its leather cover, scratched in fresh grooves, finalization protocol, version 5.0. The watch was ticking again, not backward, not forward, just ticking. And the mask, it was different. It had no face, no features, smooth as polished stone, waiting. Someone knocked on the door. For knocks, then silence. I opened it. The hallway was gone. In its place, a room lined with mirrors. Again, each one reflected a version of me. Not symbolic, not metaphor. Actual versions, some wounded, some broken, some smiling. One of them pointed to the far wall. There a door stood open. Beyond it, the chapel. The real one, or the first. Inside, the altar was gone, only the spiral remained, burned into the floor, and standing in its center, Lena. But she wasn't Lena anymore. She had no eyes, only smooth skin, like someone had erased her final expression, and yet she spoke. "You're not meant to stop it. You're meant to hold it. That's what this place is." A vessel, the spiral began to move. Not visually, spatially. The chapel bent inward, the walls folded like flesh. Every floorboard curl toward the center like they were trying to close the wound. And I understood. Dry Creek was never a town. It was a scar, a sealed injury in time, held shut by versions of me. One had to stay every time, forever. I stepped into the spiral. The journal dissolved in my hands. The watch stopped ticking dot. The mask lifted from the floor on its own end, settled into my hands. It was warm. Breathing, I turned it over. Inside the mask, written in ink that pulsed like a heartbeat. This is not to escape. This is purpose. And below that, put me on, and it will all make sense, or nothing will. Either way, you won't ask again. I hesitated, and then I put it on. Darkness, wait, then clarity, not relief, not peace, but understanding. I saw the trail, the chapel, the schoolhouse, the creek, all not as places, but as instructions, steps, a sequence, a containment protocol written in dirt and memory. And me, not the first, not the last, just the latest seal, a pressure valve made of thought, one more echo added to the endless stack. A living keystone in the cathedral of forgetting. I opened my eyes and was standing behind the counter at the diner. Same cracked hands, same apron, same mug in hand. And across the counter, a man, new, tired, haunted. He looked familiar. He ordered coffee. I smiled. You the Monroe boy? And as I poured the coffee, I heard the watch ticking again from inside my chest.